Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly O'Horo, and this is Adaptable Behavior Explained. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Adaptable Behavior Explained. I'm your host, Kelly O'Horo. I'm a therapist, EMDR consultant, trainer, mom of 5, Nonna, and someone who's spent the last 16 years walking alongside people through some of the most painful chapters of their lives. And this is part 2 of our series on infidelity after the affair. In our first conversation, we looked at many reasons why people are unfaithful. And today, I want to go underneath all of them to the reason that explains more affairs than almost any other, and the ones we talk about the least. And this is related to attachment. Here's something that might surprise you. Most affairs aren't really about sex. They're not even really about the other person. More often than not, an affair is about a longing the person can't name. A wound that was there long before their partner ever arrived. And sometimes the very thing that cracks that wound wide open is something beautiful, and that's the birth of a child. In many scenarios, I have heard with clients and other people that I've met this scenario. So in this episode, you're going to learn why who did you cheat with is the wrong question, and to ask instead what attachment injuries are and how quietly form in childhood and how they affect our behavior later in life. Why a tender, ordinary moment where a wife nurturing a new baby can ignite an old wound in her partner. I'm going to share a couple of stories of men whose affairs began not from lack of love from their wives or for their wives, but from the pain that they didn't understand in their own story. And most importantly, how this kind of wound can actually heal. So let's talk first about how most of the time we ask the wrong question. Infidelity comes to light, the first questions are almost always, how could you? And who is she? And those questions make complete sense because, especially as the partner that was cheated on, it stabs our security and our confidence. And they come straight out of devastation. But as a therapist, the question I'm listening for is a different one. It's not who, it's what happened to you that made you feel like that's the answer. Because behavior always has a why, and the why is almost always way older than the marriage or the relationship. So let's talk a little bit about what an attachment injury is. I have several episodes and a whole series on attachment, and I think really most of us should watch about attachment because we don't learn this in our childhoods. But from the time we're born, we're learning one quiet question. When I need closeness, comfort, or attention, is it welcome? Am I wanted? And for some of us, the answer growing up was a steady yes, but for many, the answer was complicated. Maybe a parent was overwhelmed or grieving or working 3 jobs or had 3 other children or simply never learned how to nurture because no one ever nurtured them. So when our need for connection is repeatedly unmet, dismissed, or treated as a burden, we adapt. Some of us learn to chase love anxiously, others learn the opposite, to need nothing, to go quiet, to never be the one asking, and we carry these blueprints into adulthood, mostly without knowing it, and then they run silently in the background until something presses directly on that wound. And something I've heard many, many times is that the birth of a new baby kind of cracks something open in a partner with this kind of attachment wound. So a baby reorganizes an entire household. If you've had children, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it organizes around one tiny, all-consuming need. And the mother, rightly, beautifully, pours herself into that infant. She's up at 3 a.m., she's up at 6 a.m., she's feeding the baby, she's learning the baby's every cue, every sound. She lights up at a single smile. She stares and kisses that baby all day long if she has the luxury to do so. And this is exactly as it's meant to be to develop secure attachment. But when you think about that, I want you to picture the man standing at the edge of that scene who's carrying an old attachment injury, a man who as a child didn't get enough of that kind of tenderness himself. And watching his wife give the baby that bottomless, attuned love can stir up something in him that he doesn't have any words to describe. And it's not jealousy of the baby. It's longing for something he didn't experience in his own life. And there's grief. And a part of him that never got held like that suddenly is very awake and aching and doesn't understand why. He feels deep shame for even feeling it. So what kind of man is jealous of his own child, he might ask himself. So he buries it and he shoves it down. And then someone outside of the home, someone with no diapers and no exhaustion and no baby spit up all over them, doesn't have any divided attention, offers the exact thing that he's starving for. That undistracted time, attention, attunement. And that feels like the thing that's been missing his whole life. And so let me tell you about two different men, two different lives, but that same ache. Let's call him Daniel. Daniel adored his wife, and when their first son was born, she became, in his words, an incredible mother. She was loving, she was nurturing, she was there. She nursed through the night. She anticipated every need. She glowed, and Daniel was proud of her and really glad that his baby had a mother like this. And at that very same time, he feels like he's disappearing, like he no longer matters. There's no room for him. There's no desire for him. And he'd lay awake at night next to them feeling like a stranger in his own home, and then hated himself for feeling that. And so here's what we uncover together. Daniel was the oldest of four. When his younger siblings started arriving, the warmth and attention he'd known started to evaporate from his mom. He learned at about 5 years old that needing his mother made him an inconvenience. She'd sigh, she'd be overwhelmed, she'd give him what he needed begrudgingly, and so he became the easy one, the one that was the helper, the kid who never asked for anything. And he buried the need so deep that he genuinely forgot it was there until he watched his wife holding their son, the way no one had really ever held him. And the 5-year-old inside of him broke wide open. So a coworker starts staying late, asking how he's doing, actually listening, looking him in the eyes. She had no distractions, and for the first time in years, Daniel felt seen. The affair wasn't about her, and it wasn't about sex. It was about a little boy who never got picked up, held, nurtured. Now, I want to be very clear. None of that excuses the betrayal. Daniel caused his wife profound pain, and part of his healing was facing that shame fully, and it is a full contact emotion. But if we had only treated the behavior, he would have missed out on that wound that caused and drove that behavior in the first place. So I'm going to take a moment and let you think about that if this is something that's happened to you or somebody that you know. And now let's talk about another person. Let's call him Marcus. He comes to see me after his second child was born. Same ache, different shape. Marcus grew up with a mom who struggled with depression, present in body, but often far away in spirit. And the lesson he absorbed was that the way to be loved was to need nothing, to be no trouble, to never add to her plate or anyone's heavy load for that matter. And so when the babies came and his wife was running on empty, Marcus never told her he was lonely. To him, saying that out loud would have made him a burden. And the one thing he'd organized his entire life around was never being that. He just got quieter, kept to himself, and more helpful, more invisible. And then a woman at his gym, uncomplicated, available, genuinely delighted by him, became the one place he could feel wanted without ever having to ask. Marcus wasn't chasing excitement. He was chasing the feeling of mattering to someone who actually had room for him. So let's look at what's really happening underneath. In both stories, the affair was a misguided attempt at self-repair. A nervous system that had been starved of attunement found a fast, powerful way to feel regulated and valued again. It's not an excuse, make no mistake. Both men caused deep harm and had to own it completely. But it is an explanation, and it matters because if all we ever treat is behavior, we miss the wound and the reason for the behavior. And an unhealed wound simply will find a new exit. The longing for nurturance when it's never been understood doesn't disappear. It just goes underground until it can't be buried any longer. And underground is exactly where affairs are born. So let's talk about the path back. Here's where there's real hope. And when we can finally name the injury. So let's talk about Daniel. When he can grieve the boy who was overlooked, when Marcus can let himself need without shame, that behavior starts to lose its grip. And this is precisely the kind of old stuck wound that EMDR therapy is built for. It helps the brain reprocess those early memories so that they stop quietly running the show. And the urges and the impulses that get us into trouble. And for the couple, the work becomes learning to turn toward each other in those vulnerable, wordless moments instead of away from one another. A new baby doesn't have to be a threat to a marriage. Sometimes it's the very thing that finally brings an old wound to the surface. And so for that, we can be grateful, and then we can pay attention to it. So if you take anything from today, let it be this. If you're carrying something you can't name, get curious instead of ashamed. Ask yourself, when have I felt this exact loneliness, this ache, this longing before? The answer is usually much, much older than this current moment. And if you're the partner of someone who strayed, their wound is not your failure. It's not your fault. You didn't cause it, and you could not have loved it away. That space that is empty in that person's heart can't be filled without their own self-work. So if you're walking through this together, the goal isn't to assign blame for the wound. It's not continuous shaming. It's to understand it so that you can keep operating out loud and awake. So if this episode resonated with you, or if you are someone who's experienced this on either side of the relationship, I hope that this is helpful. Please subscribe and share this so that you don't miss the rest of the series after the affair. And I want you to share it with someone who might need to hear this, because there's a why beneath the pain. And if any of this hit close to home, healing these attachment wounds is at the root, and there is work that can help. EMDR and couples EFT therapy can help. And we'll give you some links below to find a therapist or practitioner in your area. So thank you so much for tuning in. And if you are going through this, please share with us in the comments below. And until next time, don't forget to lead with love. It'll never steer you wrong.